We are live. Welcome to episode 26 of Shifty Perspective. In this episode, we speak to Jochem and Aron, who are the brains behind High Humans. High Humans is a new website, a new project, which is there to get a platform to people who accept that drugs should be the norm and that people who are successful, normal, functioning adults take and use drugs, and we need to break the taboo. Jochem runs the Society of Curiosity 10 Club and is focused on the expansion of consciousness. He is involved in the development of NPSs, which some people are known as legal highs, or novel psychoactive substances. Aron hosts listening sessions called The Golden Hour, and he is the guy behind High Humans. I must add to begin with that I am biased to this because I have taken part in High Humans, so there is definitely some perspective that is on the side of them in this podcast. So, okay, I'm just going to start. Hey, how you doing, guys? You good, yeah?
Yeah, hey, hi, welcome. Nice to be on your show.
Yeah,
thank you.
Same for me, man. Yeah, thanks.
So I did a little introduction, but probably best to just say a little bit about yourselves. Jochem, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Tell us who you are.
Yeah, so I've been long involved in humanism, meaning what serves being human best. And about 10 years ago, I developed a sort of a philosophy on being human. I put that into sort of a society where people investigate and discover what they feel, experience, what they think, what their values are. And we give that expression via the arts. So we use programs, artful programs, to express conscious awareness of humans, which is in contrast to a society which is run via economic productivity and all sorts of norms and ideas on humans, more of a collective thing. I propagate individualism and taking responsibility for being human. So that's a bit of my background. And concerning the MPSs, about 10 years ago, I started getting involved in importation, selling NPSs. It's been a roller coaster. Obviously, the market is super intense, changes all the time. Legislators continuously seeking, their morale to be exposed upon us. In the NPSs, we also develop applications. So we have 2 patents on NPSs, serving from PTSD to menstruation problems, like women and their period. And this is also why I think the whole topic of drugs has to be reinvestigated, because I think we should see it as something that has great benefits to humanity. And if it's recreational or if it's pharmaceutical, they're both, they can both be beneficial.
Yeah.
And so that's my point of view, and that's a bit of my background.
Cool, great, thank you. And Aron, what about you?
Well, actually, I'm my background is mostly in music, being a DJ and organizer of events for about 20 years. But simultaneously also always been into journalism and copywriting. So I was working for various magazines like the Dutch the VPRO. I worked for Vice magazine. But also always mostly writing about music. But obviously, when you write about dance music, you also there's also the subject of recreational drug use. So that's always been an interest of me as well.
Yeah.
So when Jochem had this, because you said we're the brains behind it, but I would say Jochem is the brains behind it, and I just really connected with his idea and his point of view, and I completely connect to that. And I've been working with High Humans as an interviewer, and also developing the content together with these guys. So we're interviewing many people, and it's a very interesting journey up until now, because we have we've heard many different. I mean, everybody sort of feels the same as we do, but there's always like little nuances and little new perspectives that we get that make our plight stronger. So it's a really cool project.
Is it something that you both kind of knew that drugs were more commonly used by, I guess, normal people, functioning humans? And is it something that you went into this knowing that actually there would be lots of people coming forward with it, or did you think that there would be a difficult thing to get people to come and accept this and speak about it openly?
Well, shall I answer the intent of the platform? So in the big focus, we want to have another view on the use and the permission on drugs in general. I've long been amazed about the more realistic approach of governments and the repressive approach of governments on tailored consciousness enhancement. So the fact that I decide to take something for my own enhancement of consciousness is illegalized, which is almost bizarre. How is it possible that somebody else can say what I take? It comes in line with illegalization of your sexual preference. It comes in line with how I want to use my body. So and this topic is since the war on drugs there's this ferocious war, and it seems like it's the only narrative that can be told. So I've been doing a strategic analysis on what is the issue here. One of the issues is the politician that has no view and never uses drugs and is very uncomfortable with it.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think most politicians, they only have a tool of repression. Yeah. They're very uncomfortable with uncomfortable situations. And drug use can lead to uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
So they're highly uncomfortable with that. So they want to get rid of it. Because when you get rid of it, then at least you can say, I never permitted it. I don't have to take responsibility. And unlike driving a car, which is dangerous too, we have to drive a car. You can't illegalize car driving.
Yeah.
But then they say, okay, if we have to permit car driving, then at least we have to let people get their permit, and there are rules and there are regulations, and we control them, etc. So again, they have control over the danger of driving cars. But driving cars is dangerous. And for drugs, there is this weird issue, which is also a Christian issue, that it's more realistically not right to have a great time. Humans are supposed to be productive. And humans are supposed to be predictable. And at least the last we should have is that everybody's high on material and having a great time, because they become unpredictable, they do their own thing. So that's on the political side, which is very hard to influence, because politicians have their own agendas, and they listen to the sentiment of society. And most people that don't use drugs are afraid of drugs. So the sentiment is negative. So then I analyze, so what do we need to have to change the mentality of politicians towards this issue? And that is a voice, a user voice, a normal user voice. The you and me's that have children, that run companies, that take drugs a couple of times a year, that do it purposeful, intentful, and nothing goes wrong. So the platform is basically a consumer voice platform for saying, hey, there's millions of people use drugs in a normal way with a normal life, and we don't want to be criminalized. We want this to be legalized and permitted. And this voice is currently not there because people are shameful of using drugs. People don't tell their mothers, don't tell their employees, don't tell their colleagues, don't tell their girlfriends or boyfriends. So there's shame on the topic. So the platform is a confession type platform. Me, Jochem, I take drugs. I have 4 children. I run a company. I love drugs. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm a normal human being.
No.
Wow.
How normal do you think it is? I mean, when you say millions of people, do you think that there is a bigger population percentage than we think or we know, and it's just like underpaid because people aren't accepting?
Can you repeat that?
You said that like millions of people use drugs. Do you think that it skewed the number that we think use drugs? Do you think more people use drugs than actually? Do you think it's more common than it is? you don't think you're an outlier? You think
I mean,
there are more people?
the figures are known. Like in Holland, an average of 1.5 million people yearly take drugs. If you deduct all the younger people below 16 and all the older people above 75, that's 20 to 30% of the population. That is an enormous amount of people. And they take,
Absolutely.
I mean, and if you're very honest, alcohol should be included in taking drugs. Nicotine should be included.
Absolutely.
Marijuana has to be included. So if we're very honest with ourselves, almost everyone uses some kind of consciousness stimulating material.
Yeah.
And instead of being hypocrite about it, let's make an analysis of the risks of these drugs and how to use them. And let's start educating ourselves on how to use them. Because if so many people use, and if the variety of drugs is enormous, and if there's a desire to use, then how can the government be ignoring us? But the government needs a voice which is away from what do you call it, of maluse or wrong usage or addiction, you know, because they have this kind of idea that our youth is addicted and they don't do anything anymore and they're in the gutter, and the vendors are just using airplanes and throwing drugs out of airplanes. That is their narrative.
Yeah.
You don't hear them say, I went on an MPS site, I picked a gram of this, a gram of that, I had a great weekend. The MPS vendor paid VAT and tax on it. They're quite good in relationship with each other. They check upon each other. There's some kind of control. We never hear this narrative. And
do you feel that since you started the High Humans, you're actually seeing a wider number of people that you wouldn't have expected to use drugs? Or I'd be honest, I assume that you kind of probably went into it knowing, because you yourself, as a successful businessman, probably meet other people that use drugs in your society, and it's probably who uses drugs really, that everybody does. But I guess, Aron, you going into it, is it something that, were you surprised by the number of, by the kind of people that you've had? You had teachers and stuff, right?
Yeah, well, no, I wasn't surprised by the different types of people. I must say that I've always, as someone who's been in the nightlife for 20 years, I've met so many different people that you're drawn to the music, but also to the free atmosphere of taking drugs recreationally, and you really notice that it's a very diverse group always, and most of the people that I've interviewed are actually people that I either friends or friends of friends, and are in some sort of like a sort of bigger community of mostly Amsterdam nightlife. And it's a very diverse group, and it goes from people who are just teenagers to people who are actually even in their 60s and 70s, and they can be just plumbers, with little education, or they could be writers or professors. I even have a good friend who's an astrophysicist, and he frequently likes to take drugs, and it's fine, So I wasn't really surprised, but I was actually quite pleased with the diversity that we were able to find in the people, and that it's not just 20-year-olds who just want to have a good time and party. It also goes very it goes from people who like to party and who take recreational drugs, also to people who really use it very seriously for therapeutical purposes, and this is also a very interesting, actually a very interesting topic, I think. In fact, maybe this is for later, but I just got this book. It's called The Shamans of Prehistory, and it's this really cool. It's this amazing book. I ordered on Amazon. It's an amazing book that states that all the cave paintings that we find from 20,000-year-olds are probably depicting psychoactive substance experiences. Previously, this is from the 90s, but before that time, they couldn't actually they couldn't actually figure out what all the weird like geometrical patterns were and everything. But then there's these two guys who said, well, it's probably just shamans who were taking DMT or some other substance, and they were depicting this on the walls of the cave. So, you know, it just seems to me that it's something that has been with humanity ever since the dawning of Homo sapiens. You know, so it's ridiculous that we're living in this time where we're not allowed to use it. And as Jochem says, where we're being repressed, and where the only narrative is it's not allowed. You know? It should change. So yeah.
And do you feel like it's obviously not a bit of battle, but do you see a light at the end of the tunnel since doing this? Do you think we can actually change the laws and society will go towards legalizing drugs?
Yeah, of course.
No, I don't think we see the end of the tunnel. But I do think if you look at the United States, Europe is very repressive at the moment. And I think if you look at the Corona policies also, you know, repression is a big thing right now on Earth. However, in the United States, you see amazing developments, legalizing marijuana. Oregon has legalized small quantities of coke and heroin for self-use. There's immense amounts of clinical trials on psychoactives and psychedelics. But I think America uses it very much from an economic point of view. They've seen in Colorado that you can earn enormous amounts of money liberalizing the trade of marijuana and the growth of marijuana. And this economic perspective is obviously something that takes a country into a new lead. Also, a lot of new medical pharma type companies are arising, testing LSD, testing psilocybin, testing ecstasy for therapy purposes, etc. So I think the shift is coming, but I think we're in the dark ages right now in Europe, and I think that's why also High Humans can be a very important platform for people to connect worldwide of plain and normal drug users that want a change of perspective, a change of narrative. So the idea of High Humans is it becomes international. We're now only Holland. But why not pop over to Berlin, London, New York, and start building a collective of like-minded people with similar mentalities, with similar responsibilities, which are willing to take the courage to say, yes, I can oppose my employee that I use. I can say to my parents I use. I think that's what's needed right now. So yeah, the answer is we're still in the dark ages, but I think we're seeing light.
It's quite interesting that it's in the Netherlands that this is happening. However, like I've always had the impression that the Dutch are the most open culture to progressive when it comes to drugs. However, there is the whole thing of the law changing. Do you think that? Do you think the Netherlands really is going backwards on this, or do you think that like you are leading the torch and could be comparable to somewhere like America, where you could have legalized drugs and stuff like that?
I think the signals right now are very negative.
Also,
yeah. So I think the signals right now are very
like
negative.
The social kind of.
Yeah. So let me answer. I think Holland is at the moment very repressive and negative. And I think it has a lot to do with the neoliberalist attitude that we've had. We've been selling ourselves off, our values off to money. And unlike America, which is great in dealing with money, Holland is not great in dealing with money. So our values, our liberal values, our tolerance values are sort of sold out. So at the moment, our main party, VVD, is against liberalizing marijuana, which is obviously insane because we're already half liberalized and legalized. Yeah. So at the moment we're trailing behind, but most likely we will wake up and say, well, what the hell? We were the leaders of the world, and now we're trailing behind. What's happening? Yeah. Absolutely.
I'd like to add to that because I just had an interesting interview with a guy called Wietse Potjeweit, and he's the writer of a book called Ecstasy, a biography, or Ecstasy and Biografie. It hasn't been translated to English yet, but it's like a biography of the ecstasy pill in Holland, which is, Holland is known worldwide as one of the biggest producers of the substance. And it's very interesting because he tells a lot about how the attitude changed from, us being very pragmatic in our drug policy. We had a big heroin problem, and we were the first country to say, you know what, we're just gonna admit that we have this problem. We're just gonna instead of repressing, we're just going to deal with it. We're just going to treat these people as human beings, have them change what do you call them, injection needles for clean ones, give them methadone. Give them some perspective to get rid of, to shake their habit. And what you see is that 20 years down the line, the heroin junkie has basically just left the building. There's not many of them left. Well, obviously some of them kept doing what they were doing, but at least they were being supported by by society in some way. And it was a model that was inspiring to many other countries. And then, as Jochem also already stresses, what you see is the change in perspective when we got like around 2001, we got like a more Christian and a more neoliberal government. And as soon as that happened, they started what I would call just fear mongering. It's like, politicians need to be, I think what the discomfort that people feel in society about drugs, as Jochem always also said, it's easy for them to just tap into that and say, you know what, we're just gonna repress. We're just gonna take care of it, and then people will be like, oh yeah, okay, great. It's like when you have security at the airport. It's like you have to take off your shoes and you have to you have to throw away all the liquids that are more than 100 milliliters. It's like this insane bullshit, and then somehow it makes people feel more secure. So the answer to all the drug cartels and all the shit going on in all the criminality going on in Holland is, more repression. But in the end, what Wietse also really interestingly shows is that when Holland in 2009, I believe it was, they illegalized PMK, which was a main compound of MDMA, which was being how do you say it? Imported from China. So they had like this collaboration with the Chinese government, and they made it so that it couldn't be imported again anymore. And then what they started doing in China was making PMK glycidate. I'm not sure if that's the English term for it, but it's like a little change of molecules, and so and it was actually in powder form, and the PMK was like oil, so it was much easier to get into the country, and it was legal. And then what happened was that there was an extra production a link that had to be made before it was PMK. So there was more work for the criminal organizations. And the other thing was that, what was I going to say? Well, it just made Holland actually more of a also, yeah, sorry, that's the other thing.
Yeah, the production.
Sorry. The drug, because that's a big thing right now that they're talking about, is like the drug trash. The nature is
the waste products. Do you mean?
The waste, exactly. The drug waste. So the drug waste went up like astronomically, and all the shit that we're dealing with now, the South Holland drug cartels, the drug waste, all that shit is all a big part is a result of that repression. So it's insane, and that's just one example. I'm sure there's many others.
So when these people get into power and like, I guess, like, so it's Christian Democrats, did you say, are the ones who were the driving force behind this?
Yeah,
Well, at first, I guess, right? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, you go.
Yeah. Okay. That's the people that are pushing it. Are they do they speak to? Do they do censuses, ask questions, surveys across the population, and find out the people's opinions on drugs, or is it just like this is the party policies? People vote them in for other reasons, and then they just happen to push for this? Or do you think that there are, because of lack of information, people do want them to make strict rules?
Let me answer this, Ash.
Cool.
This socialist attitude of Holland, which was long prevailing, disappeared when neoliberalism came in place.
Mm-hmm.
So money as a standard route for everything. So selling off government values to companies.
Yeah.
Holland cannot deal with it. United States is very good with dealing with money in that type of view. But Holland, as a socialist tolerant company, was selling off their values. So what has happened is that the new government, the VVD and the Christian parties, the Christian parties by nature against drugs because they're Christian. And so, God does not believe in you taking drugs. But the liberal parties, they became infected by the neoliberalist attitude and pushed away socialism. And the social parties lost their anchor points. And so the point we're now at is that there is no debate because there's all these advisory governments like the RIVM and the KAM in Holland, and they bring out reports saying that it is not working to repress. It's not beneficial to illegalize. That ecstasy, for instance, is not harmful at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. That alcohol is the number 1 or 2 drug for harmfulness, and ecstasy is number 17 on the list. Similar to the book of David Nutt. You remember the book of David Nutt? Yeah.
Absolutely. Brilliant book.
So everywhere the science points to the same point of view, that it's more harmful to illegalize for the environment, for economics, for the usage of, for giving information to youngsters. It's always the same problem. But because of selling off our socialist values, we're now stuck in sort of a moralistic, a neoliberalistic attitude. And they throw away the evidence. They don't listen to their own advisory councils, and they just say illegalize, illegalize, illegalize. And that's where we're at the moment. And that's why I think high humans is key. So let's get more famous Dutch people to give confessions. Let's start expanding on the group of people saying, guys, we're using, and start representing us. Because if it's 2 million people in Holland that you're not willing to represent, you're basically lying to your own people. And that's sort of the angle we're in right
now. It's so frustrating because I would also kind of assume that if there's a neoliberalist agenda or government power, then capital, if that is the main drive, then surely it is actually financially beneficial to legalize MPSs and legalize drugs because of the, like you said, the taxes on it, and there's VAT. You could tax heavily. I think states like Colorado have quite a high tax on cannabis, which generates massive revenue. So I don't actually see why it doesn't suit the agenda of both political sides.
Because in the United States, there's a very plain view on money. If you want to collect money in the United States, you shoot up an idea, you call a bunch of friends, you have a bunch of money. It's very clearly put. If you say, guys, let's legalize marijuana, we're going to earn $6 billion. In 10 minutes, a bunch of guys are calling each other and they're pushing the Senate to legalize. In Holland, because we don't have this plain view on money, so we've become addicted to money, but we're not honestly admitting to the plain view on money. So instead of the government saying, hey, let's go more towards the money route and let's earn more, then at least it would be clear cut. But now we're sort of selling off the social values while saying we have a social attitude. We still pretend to be the Dutch that we were in the 70s, 80s, 90s, yet we've changed. So we're not being honest, the Dutch. That's what the point of that's basically what it is. We're lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why it's very funny that America is taking the lead now in this topic, because it's the ones that created the war on drugs. Nixon was the one creating the war on drugs.
So true, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're taking the lead. So that's the it's the funny aspect of where we stand right now.
Wow.
The Dutch being the losers.
Aron, you've got something to say on that, I see.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I agree with that, and but I also spoke to the old one of the top people at Jelinek, which is an organization. It's a drug prevention organization. It's people who are addicted can go there, but it was also a place where in the 90s and I think still actually you can have your drugs tested, but I'm not sure if it's actually still going. But
they don't do that anymore.
They don't actually. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, but everything has been gone more towards this repression idea. And his name is Jaap Jamin. He's just retired 2 years ago. It's an amazing guy. He's done tons of great campaigns for normal. Actually, what we're trying to do as well. He's been a very active person for that cause always. And what he said is that in the 80s and 90s, you still had these really great people in the government. How do you say ambtenaar is like state officials, right? I guess like not ministers or anything, but the people working at the departments and
civil servants.
Civil servants, exactly. Yeah. And it was like in that time when there were people who had real knowledge of the subject they were on, and they would stay in the same function for years and years and years and build on that expertise. And there was knowledge was considered as something valuable. And then in the 2000s it became like this carousel. So someone would be on in one department and then move on to the next one, and so all this like knowledge and kind of got lost, and also so it's and that also has made the apart from this whole neoliberalist versus socialist thing, it's also just become much more opportunistic. It's like just short-term vision. It's like nobody cares about long-term vision. I mean, the CAM or the RIVM can tell you all they want about how it can work on the long run. But all these politicians are just like busy with winning the next election, and I think in general the whole politics has become more like that. Like when are we going to see the big picture instead of just looking a few years ahead? Yeah.
So what is the actual outlook at the moment? Right now you've got elections in March in the Netherlands, right? And then the current political parties want to ban MPS as legal highs, right?
Yeah, there's a new law proposition to illegalize the MPS industry, but I think mainly it's driven by political pressure in Europe, like Germany, England, France, etc. So it does not originate plainly from Holland, because I think Holland is fine at the moment because the NPS is no issue at all. Because I mean, cocaine use and ecstasy use and marijuana are by far the most products used. Yeah. So it's mainly an EU pressure thing, and that's always problematic because we're basically being pulled into other countries' views on drugs, and that's more of an issue than ever because of global politics. So that's also why we're running the campaign. So we have the three websites launched. One is a dialogue on drugs, where we invite well-established, knowledgeable people to participate. One is the petition, where people can sign off and say, please use logic for the new policy. And the other one is the high humans we're talking about right now. So we're contesting. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, no, go on. Carry on.
Say that again?
No, carry on. It's okay. You
Yeah, I mean, England 3 years ago launched this complete psychoactive law. Everything psychoactive is legalized. And just recently, a report came out that there is a higher level of drug usage ever in England. So the knowledge is coming out more and more. I see that the reports are coming. Science is proving. So my feeling is sort of we're in a bad political arena at the moment. But I think the more we start pushing, the more the knowledge comes out, the more people stand up and say, we're using, then at some point, the tilting point will come. But we're going to have to fight. So, we can't sit and look and watch at politicians. It's never a good idea, by the way.
Agreed. I would also like to add to that, because that's also a part of the opportunistic model that we're seeing in politics, is that you do have actually some parties in Holland, like GroenLinks, Green Left, whatever you want to translate that to, D66. And they sometimes, some of them will say like, we support a change in drug policy, but when it really boils down to it, and when the shit hits the fan, they're like, they're out. They don't. It's not top priority at all for them. So I think that what we're doing with High Humans is really important to show that it's not just a few people who are just doing it. It's actually a very broad movement. Yeah.
I mean, let me add to this, Ash. Let me add to this. Yeah. Let me add to this. If you can have enough people to stand up and say, "Go fix this shit. We're using drugs, and we have normal lives," that will empower the politician to say, "Hey, I can represent a new line of people." Because they do know they're dealing, they do read the reports of the RIVM and the CAM. And they know that their policy is leading nowhere. And they know it costs unbelievable amounts of money. So they are aware of the facts, but they need some kind of empowerment. People empowerment, power to the people. So High Humans is power to the people, power to the drug users, the normal drug users. And that's why we want this platform should be filled with 10, 15, 20, 30,000 people of all sorts, representing society, representing all sorts of professions, representing all sorts of drug use and experiences. That's the purpose of the platform.
Do you think that politics, though, or politicians pander to the kind of voters that the more people that turn out to vote, which are generally the older population, who then have a negative view on drugs? So the younger population, who I'm not sure about in Holland, to be honest, but I know like in the UK, like the younger population do not vote en masse, and it's the older population that do vote. So therefore, most policies of successful politicians are based around the views of catering to the older population. Is that something the same in the Netherlands?
Yeah, but I think you're misinterpreting the power of democracy. I think voting has nothing to do with policy. I think what has to do with policy is it has to do with pressure points. So one pressure point is your policy is not working. Another pressure point is EU saying illegalize. We don't want to have your garbage from the Netherlands. Yeah. Another pressure point is a group of people in Holland that come up with a voice saying, start fixing this. I don't want to be criminalized. Yeah, so they have all these pressure points. Politicians are very sensitive to issues. They don't like issues. They want to get rid of issues. So you have to make drug use an issue. You have to say as a user, I don't want you to criminalize my children anymore. I want you to take care of my children. Like, for instance, my daughter, 14, she's in high school. And she has all these friends that are on ketamine, ecstasy, alcohol, and there's no education. So I'm angry as a parent. And I'm going to call the government and say, go fix this, government. Because the children are using anyway, even though you have this repressive policy, they can get it anywhere. So your policy is failing. So again, you have to make it an issue. So your High Humans has to become an issue platform. We High Humans go fix this for us. And so voters, that's not a thing. I mean, voting is an illusion. Yeah. It's the same way around. If a mother complains about a young son getting addicted to a drug, then she'll complain, and that complaining is an issue, is a pressure point for the politicians, and that's why they want to illegalize, because then at least they can say we try to illegalize it.
I think most people don't realize that though. So I think a lot of people don't actually get involved in contacting local politicians, and the people who do get involved are often maybe not with the agenda that you're trying to push.
And that's why High Humans has to be a movement of people knocking on the door of politicians and saying, go fix this, go start regulating, give us a drug driver's license, give us information, give us quality products, stop sending us criminalized organizations, my children, etc. So so instead of using the democracy system, we're using a marketing. And so the platform has to have enough empowerment, enough famous people, enough influential people, that it can knock on the politician's door and empower the politician, say, hey, I'm getting a knock on my door. I have an issue here. I have knowledge and insight. I have to do something about it. I can gain votes with it. So we're using a different route than the normal lobbyist route or the normal voters route, or because it's not working.
Do you both have the same opinion about how drugs should be legalized or decriminalized, or what the law should be? But each of you, what is your vision of how they should change it?
You want to go first, Jochem?
Sure. So my view is very simple. Use science to understand how dangerous a specific drug is. So you make a list of the dangers of drugs. Then you classify them according to science, not according to bullshit. So alcohol is the most dangerous drug. Second is nicotine. Third is crack cocaine. Fourth is heroin. Fifth is la la la. Seventh is and 17th is ecstasy. So that's the first thing you do. Then you start introducing regulation. So basically you say you can buy drugs at specific permitted platforms or apothecaries, etc. Only under the condition, one, you get your drugs driver's license, and second, that you use the app for the drug driver's license. So when you take...
What do you mean by that, sorry, when you say a drug driver's license? So like a license to use drugs?
Yeah, so you have to learn what drugs do, where the dangers are, what the addiction problems can be, how to address other people's issues with drugs, when drugs usage is great and when it's not great, etc. You learn and you teach people like a normal driver's license. Like driving a car. Car driving is dangerous. You should not speed. You should not drink and drive. You should not take marijuana when you drive. It's logic. So you basically teach people to deal with these substances. And then once you do that, you add an app to it, a drug usage app, and then you can order via permitted sites or via the apothecary. And I order a gram of cocaine, or I order an ecstasy pill, whatever. I register it. It's limited to a certain amount, so I don't order too much. I can order 10 pills per year, for instance. This obviously will have all sorts of complications as well, but it will create more consciousness on the issue. It will create tax revenues. It will create less criminalized organizations. It will create more information for young people. You can have more control on addiction, etc. So I think, and what I like about the NPS industry, because it's the first step towards that control mechanism. Because what the NPS industry does, they control the quality of products. They know their customers. They pay their VAT and their taxes. And once somebody takes too much, they're often cut off from the supply. Yeah. When they become, NPS vendors know when somebody's getting addicted or an idiot or whatever, and you just stop it. So instead of looking at the NPS industry and using their knowledge, they want to go for the repression route again, and illegalization. And I think that's very stupid, because they have lots of market information. So that's my view.
Cool. Okay.
Man, you stole my thunder, man. No, it's true. I mean, I agree on everything you say. I never really thought about a license, but that sounds like a very good idea. What I think that is what I can say from my own experience is that, you know, when I started experimenting with drugs when it was mid 90s, late 90s, there was still this this very open debate about drugs in Holland, and there was you know, I would go to house parties where I would be able to get my pills tested, and there was another stand where I could get information from Unity, which was actually a Jelinek sponsored initiative, and it was very helpful because if I wouldn't have had those that information and also that I've had pills tested that were really not good, and they contained almost no ecstasy, and I was able to just chuck them. You know, it's like, okay, well, have to find some new ones. And also going to Unity really gave me a lot of information. I was curious about these things, you know, and this curiosity. Many youngsters like you say, Jochem, about your daughter. You know, they're maybe not your daughter herself, but you know, many people her age are, many kids her age are of course very curious, and now all we offer them is just saying that it's bad, you know, like that's the general narrative, and it's not all bad, and you know, and they know it's bullshit, that's why they're going to do it anyway, because they feel that it's bullshit that we're telling them. So my view on the how the policy could change is basically the same as what Jochem says, but I think the pillars are education, you know, openness, and also regulation, and also yeah, I think it's a very good idea to first test people on whether they are knowledgeable enough to actually take a substance that they should take, and they should also be guided in this. You know, I also I've been doing plant-based
psychedelic ceremonies,
medicine ceremonies, and you know, this is always under the guidance of a very seasoned shaman. But what you see is that you know, there for instance with ayahuasca, there was it was illegalized in Holland because there was someone who died after a ceremony. But you know, it's very hard to say if it was due to the ayahuasca. But what you can see is that there's a lot of people who are just you know, administering ayahuasca without any without much knowledge of the plants, and then things can go wrong. But if we would have like an environment in which we could say, okay, this is a how do you say it, a certified shaman, and this guy can do
better regulation on it.
Exactly, but that's not possible because, you know, the only answer to that is repression, and it's a shame because it's a plant that has brought me many insights and has really helped me work through a lot of issues in my life, and I think it would benefit many other people as well. So, yeah,
absolutely. I feel the aspect of education, what you mentioned before, is something that is actually way more harmful than it does more harm than it does good. Because when, even for myself, I was not educated correctly about drugs. Like I was, you know, it's almost like a dishonest education where you're just told, yeah, all of these drugs are bad. If you do this, you're going to become addicted to this. And then when you then try, for me, like cannabis as you know, my first drug to try, you then realize like, oh shit, they weren't telling the truth about that. And then that kind of can lull you into a false sense of security. And then you think, oh, well, I've been lied about, you know, cannabis being dangerous, and it's not dangerous. Well, then why do I trust what they say about the other drugs? And then that goes on, and then maybe you don't actually have the correct education to realize, you know, some drugs, you know, there are dangers involved in it. And if you just tell everyone that it's bad, all drugs are bad, and then they realize that it's not true, then they might go into trying other drugs without actually having, you know, the right safety principles, which then risk their lives.
Yeah.
I notice that as a person, you know, from my own experiences. So yeah, I can imagine just above the board that miseducation of drugs just causes a lot of damage. I don't know what the statistics are on drug deaths in the Netherlands, but I think that if people clued up about drugs, a lot less people would die.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to like expand this and try and like work with educators and do you have connections with the government to try and like have a good dialogue with them, or are you just doing this on your own thing and hoping that they just pick up on it?
No, we have strong connections with governmental institutes.
Cool.
So we're in contact with many, especially on drugs dialogue also. And we want to sort of make a connection of all the people that have a reasonable view on drugs and start influencing and talking to the government. And also, for instance, on high humans, I would want to start also interviewing young people. You know, even if they don't take drugs, but how do they see drugs? What do they hear of their young friends and colleagues?
Mm-hmm.
And we're expanding the platform also to scientific views on drugs, giving advice on drugs, giving experiences on drugs. So we want to create a more all-round platform and connect to the institutes that have knowledge on these topics, and then start going towards the influential governmental institutes that decide on policies. So yes, we want to do that.
Great. I've got a question actually in the comments, and it's do you guys think that all drugs should be legalized, including various dangerous fentanyl analogs, which are very easy to overdose on? And how do you propose the shift should take place from where we are now to where we ought to be in terms of drug policy? Oh, so it's two questions. But yeah, so again, first of all, what do you think about the illegal drugs, such as the dangerous drugs, such as fentanyl?
My view is there should be a shift. We should decide on a shift between non-dangerous and more dangerous, and we have to decide somewhere where the line is. And I also feel that if you offer like 20 normal drugs which are not that dangerous, that the demand for very dangerous drugs is not that big anymore. Because if you have a palette of marijuana and 3-MMC and ecstasy and perhaps a bit of cocaine, whatever, if you have a palette where you can choose from something that fits your personality, your type of character, your type of circumstantial environment, then why would you shift to, you know, more dangerous things? So I would say there should be, but this can be scientifically researched. We can basically say, you know, what's the harm of a specific drug, and somewhere we draw the line.
So if it's really harmful, would you say it should be banned? Or do you think that all drugs should not?
There's common sense in illegalizing things that are really dangerous or really harmful. Yeah, I mean, you know, you should probably illegalize very fast motorbikes also. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, you know, I'm not pro, but as a policymaker, it makes sense to say this is too dangerous. It leads to too much problem. We should not propagate that. But I do think that once you illegalize a bunch of them, then that palette should be enough for people to have good times, or, you know, play around with. Yeah, so that's my.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Jochem. I've been doing many interviews now, and you know, it's, I mean, from you know, starting with experimenting with drugs in the 90s and having this free environment in Holland where we were able to take many different things, and it was sort of illegal, but it wasn't, you know, you weren't getting into any trouble of it over it. There was always this thing in everywhere I went was like, well, as long as you don't do heroin, you know, that was like a no-no. And the same now, I would say, goes for crystal meth. It's probably something that you'd rather not get involved with, because it's, you know, it seems like it's too addictive to shake, you know. So, you know, if you have, like you say, this palette of you know, of other options, then why would you even bother with crystal meth and heroin? I'm sure people would still
people
take
want more, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah, that's true. I mean, that's true, but I'm not sure. I think that it's I think it would be good if the Dutch government would say, okay, this would be a good idea. Like have them do a test where it's all blind, like you don't see what which drugs or what, and you just see what are the negative effects and the positive effects, and you don't see the name that goes along with it. And then based on that, let's have them make a new policy that is like science based and not based on these
preconceived notions of
exactly preconceived notions of ecstasy, that's like let's shake all those emotions and just focus on the facts. I think that's but then I think there would really still be but I think then there would still be substances that would probably best left illegal.
What are the substances that people use the most in your experience doing the high humans? Is there a pattern, like most people you interviewed related to psychedelics, or is it ecstasy or cocaine? Do you get many heroin users, for example?
I guess I'll answer that because I've been doing most of doing the interviews. I mean, there's the group of, but it maybe it's also because of the type of people that we're interviewing, but we haven't actually had many heroin addicts or heroin users. Let's not call them addicts immediately, but heroin is an addictive substance. But there's very little people that have actually used that. And then there's I would say there's two groups.
Can I interrupt for a second, Aron?
Yeah, of course.
Because I strongly disagree with the idea of addiction. I don't think heroin is addictive at all.
Interesting.
I think addiction has a lot to do with a personal situation. People often are very unhappy. They have really bad circumstances. They start using drugs for escapism or other purposes. They get locked in some kind of vicious circle and they become addicted. Cocaine is as addictive as heroin. Alcohol is the most addictive of all. People drink every day 3, 4, 5 glasses, which is very normalized. So I think addiction and big scientists also say addiction is a very different thing than we like to believe. The narrative on addiction is wrongly explained. It has a lot to do with being happy or not.
Yeah,
I agree with that. A happy human being is not addicted to these types of substances. So I think.
Would you say like the physical addiction though?
Yeah, but even heroin. Yeah, I mean, I've taken heroin. I don't like it. It doesn't fit my personality. So I'm not using it a lot. So it is probably addictive for certain personality types in certain circumstances. And yes, once you take it a lot, it's physically addictive. But alcohol is enormously physically addictive. To get rid of alcohol addiction is almost impossible. My mother was an alcohol addict. She couldn't stop. So I would more so, I mean, in a perfect society, everything is legal. Because it's yours to decide, Ash. You decide what you take. You're a conscious human being. It's your responsibility. But in the current societal setup, and because we need to take a small step, you probably take the most safe drugs at the moment. Okay, you take a bunch like 5 and you show how it works. You get the permit going, you get the driver's license going, and then you show to society, hey, you see, the results are better than illegalization. And then, I mean, heroin has a reputation which is hard to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're saying, the physical aspect of it makes it a lot harder to shake. But I haven't taken it, so I'm not speaking from maybe I'm speaking from my emotions. This is a good example. I shouldn't be a politician.
That's why I'm correcting you, because you have to be very careful with the storytelling that goes on.
The word addiction.
True.
Yeah.
But to add to the addiction thing, it's true that. It's someone mentioned in one of the interviews that there's a let me think about the name. There's a psychiatrist, a Canadian psychiatrist, and his name is Gabor Mate, and he says Yeah, don't ask about the addiction. Ask about the pain, and I think it's true. I mean, I've struggled with addiction myself. You know, at some point I was taking drugs for the wrong reasons, and I felt uncomfortable with it. It wasn't as though I was doing it every day, but when I was doing it for the wrong reasons. So it felt like an addiction because it was not something that I was fully enjoying or fully in control of. So I really had to deal with the pain that was underlying, and that got me got 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 rid of the addiction. You know, it was like that was the problem.
Yeah.
So I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I didn't hear though. Oh, sorry. Go on. Jochen?
no, I was making a joke. So Aaron should try some heroin, and then let's rediscuss.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you know.
Yeah, exactly. Let me try that first, and if I don't show up at High Humans anymore, then you know that.
Yeah. Then we know
that I was right. Goeie.
And then still look at your pain, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I didn't get an answer though of what is the most common drug from the people that you have interviewed so far, because that probably gives a good perspective of why people use drugs.
What was that? Sorry.
What is the most common drug so far from the people that you've interviewed that is used?
Ecstasy, I would say, and cocaine. Those two. Wouldn't you agree, Jochem, that most of the people...
Marijuana.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. People don't even mention that. It's not even considered a drug anymore.
That's already permitted. Yeah.
Alcohol. Everybody talks about alcohol. And everybody agrees that alcohol is a drug, you know? There's plenty of people that I spoke to...
Alcohol is a drug, yeah.
Yeah, that said they had a much bigger issue with alcohol than with many other substances, so, yeah.
There's this funny story in David Nutt's book. What's the title again? Drugs Without the High.
Drugs Without Hot Air.
Yeah.
Hot air.
And he states a situation of something very dangerous, and then he starts saying, yeah, and it's dangerous, and if you do it, then it's really bad. You can be addicted to it. It costs a lot of money.
It's called equity, right?
Yeah.
Is it the equity?
It was horse riding. It was horse riding. So he was basically saying, when you horse ride and you fall off, you can't take care of your family anymore. You get seriously damaged. The chance of falling off is very high. And then he said, so why is horse riding not forbidden by the government? So it's very interesting how we've created these ridiculous narratives on drugs that just don't make any sense.
Yeah,
I think the media plays into that because everyone loves a good story. You know, it sells a lot of papers when there's something bad about drugs, when it's like, oh, you know, the spice epidemic, or, you know, someone somewhere has died from ecstasy, you know, out of the tiny number of people that do. But, you know, they're like, you know, some young person who's 18 and they overdosed, they drank too much water and they died. And that sells a lot of papers. So therefore, when you have these, even though they are actually statistical outliers, when you have these cases happen and then the media reports on it, it becomes almost, I'm not saying not glamorized like in a good way, but it's sensationalized. And then it seems like it's a bigger problem than it is.
Well, I got a good story for that, if I may. It was I was working for Vice magazine, and it was 2014, and it was at the ADE. There were 3 people who died from wrong ecstasy pills. I mean, you have to consider that there's like 400,000 people in town at that time visiting the ADE. So, you know, I mean, and in all those years, that's the only thing that happened. But immediately, and it was a wrong. It wasn't the right.
It wasn't ecstasy itself.
It wasn't exactly. So it was a wrong pill, and it was only one dealer that was dealing them, and you know they traced it and everything. But immediately the whole repression narrative started, you know, steaming up again. And you know, I wrote this article saying, you know, that you know, trying to you know, be the voice of reason and say let's not immediately start this whole repression shit again. And I've used ecstasy myself, and I was open about it, and I spoke out about it, and also talked about my own use. And then I was invited to a show on the radio, on Radio 1, and it was like in Hilversum, and it was NCRV, I think it was. So it was also a Christian-based broadcasting. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but
Wow.
I was there, and it's like I was a DJ, and I was the editor-in-chief of Thump, which was a magazine about electronic music. So I was a journalist and a DJ. But I was introduced as, okay, and next to me is user and journalist and DJ Aron Friedman. And I'm like, but we're going to commercials now. So in the commercials, I'm like, dude, what the fuck, And then I got back in, and we get back in, and I was like, well, this is the exact problem. Like, I admit to use, and I am immediately framed as a user / whatever. But I'm a user first. And so if my grandmother who lives, not my grandmother, but my great aunt who lives in Brabant tunes into radio and hears that, she's like, she probably thinks that I'm lying under the bridge with a needle in my arm, homeless, whatever. So it's like it's a real problem that as soon as you admit to drug use, you are framed as a user, and whatever that means. So yeah, that's the media.
What do your families? Oh, sorry, go on, Jochen.
No,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, Jochen, you were about to say something. There's a delay.
Yeah. No, it's just hilarious, this whole user thing.
Yeah.
It's like, are you a user? I mean, I have friends that never use, and then when you give them something, they use, and then they deny it again. And it's one big bad joke, this whole, drug narrative.
Yeah.
It's time to grow up, I think, as a humanity. Fix your life, take responsibility, take whatever you want, take care of each other. Instead of a government. Yeah, take responsibility. That's what it's all about. Stop being a baby.
How do you discuss this with your families? Obviously, you've got kids, Jochem, Aron. You don't, but your parents, obviously, you said if your grandma hears this, are you open about drugs with them? Do you have a dialogue with them?
Me or Jochem?
Both of you.
I'll go.
I mean, probably both different situations.
I was talking about my great aunt, but it's just an example. My mom.
Your parents,
actually, yeah, my mom. She passed away this year, but when she was still alive, when we were just when I was just starting to experiment with MDMA, with ecstasy, I was 17, and we were visiting a family. Befriended family, and there were kids there too. And I was like, it was like I was like a missionary. I was like, oh, I just saw the light, ecstasy, and I was like talking about it to their kids who were like kind of my age. And then the kids like talked to their mother like, we think Aron's gone crazy, and he's a user now. And so I came home one night, and my mom was there, and she's just crying, and it was just really sad, because she thought that I was just gonna end up in the gutter, and it was just sad because later I became a DJ. So my mom supported the idea of me being a DJ, but she still had that idea of the parties where all these weird people were being all aggressive on ecstasy. She didn't know. So I took her to a techno party. It was really cool. We did the party with Jeff Mills and with a bunch of other DJs, and we were really proud that we were doing this party. And it was my birthday, so I said, "Mom, will you come over?" And then she just really, it was in the Melkweg, the venue here in Amsterdam. It was just like a really magical night. And my mom was there, and I kind of, showed her around, and then I had things to do and drugs to take. So I didn't want to confront her with that. So I just kind of sneaked away and said, okay, well, thanks for coming. And, and then she stayed until like almost till the end. And then the next day she said, it was so great. Everybody was so nice. I didn't have any idea that probably not. I was like, well, almost everybody was on drugs there, Mom. So that's the atmosphere that I like about it. And, yeah, changed her views on it. Yeah.
Amazing. What were you, Jochem?
Yeah, I have a very, very clear-cut perspective on this. I have two teenagers. Anything sex and drugs that you completely openly discuss, they become self-reliant. They become self-empowered. So both my kids don't take drugs. We discuss everything. We provide every perspective. I tell them everything I do. They can ask anything.
Cool.
And it leads to them feeling empowered to decide themselves when or how they're going to relate to the topic. And let's jump to another instance. I was married last year in Portugal, and we had a wedding of 150 people from 80 till 5 years old. And after the wedding, we had an ecstasy punch for everyone. Yeah. And so everyone, including my uncles who'd never taken ecstasy, was on ecstasy, except for the children that decided themselves that it was not for them to use. It was too much. So they were looking with big eyes to everybody on ecstasy, whilst being empowered in themselves not to use. So my gut feeling is the more you empower people to openly discuss, the more you give them responsibility, the more self-aware they become and self-reliant.
Yeah.
So that's my view on this topic. And that's why I don't believe that the government should intervene and tell us what's good for us, because they have never met us.
Yeah. It's
never talked to us.
I want to add to that, because I've had a few talks with people who say, my parents were very open about drugs, and I decided not to use until I was 18 or whatever, and usually the ones that talk about the openness of the parents and the parents who actually, gave them the autonomy to decide for themselves are the ones who made the most wise decisions in that subject. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
We've done well over an hour, so we'll start wrapping it up soon. It would be great to find out what you guys are doing in the coming months with this, what you've got, what plans you have with High Humans, and if you've got any kind of information that you want to put out there, anything you feel is really important for any of this, especially people who don't use drugs as well.
I sort of. Are you there?
Hello. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. So the quick.
I've lost your video.
Yeah. Can you? I'm sorry. I'm here.
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, you're back. That's good.
Okay. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry. It was.
The question is, what are you doing? What you do have planned in the next few months with High Humans? What is the next steps? And is there anything, message that you feel is important to get out there now to people, whether they use drugs or people who don't use drugs and have not used drugs?
Yeah, so the plan for the platform is to make it more of an online magazine, more advanced, and start bringing in more famous people. So famous people both on the influential side, but also on the knowledgeable side, giving more perspective on the scientific aspects, more funny aspects of drug use, and start getting more confessions in. So start building up to a few thousand people that actually do the confessions. The platform is also connected to the petition platform. So we want to get 50,000 petitions. So then before the elections, we can start basically saying to the government, guys, here's a platform of users with a message to you. And that message is start representing us. Start understanding that there's 2 million people in Holland that have normal use. Start regulating these materials and don't criminalize us. So that's our purpose. Also, we're looking at other countries to see if other countries can pick up the same platform. Berlin, New York, London, etc. Because it would be kind of cool to make it a worldwide online magazine with this specific topic and the courageousness of people to speak up. I mean, for Dutch people, it's quite easy to speak up, but in France, for instance, it's even much harder. Or in England. So that'd be the challenge. And my message to users and non-users is let's become more open about the discussion. Let's respect each other and share information, and not have a verdict upon this topic. Look at it more scientifically, look at it more historically, look at it more personally, and let's get a conscious dialogue going. That's my advice.
Yeah.
And take as much as you can, of course.
Yeah. do drugs, everybody.
Yeah.
No, I also agree. I think one of the biggest problems in this whole in the whole discussion is the judgment and the projections of people who are afraid of it on people who are not afraid of it and who are just experimenting with it. And I've also spoken to people who had struggled with addiction and said that, if there would have been less judgment in society, it's not just policy, it's also society that I think should become more, just everybody should become more open-minded about this. And if there wouldn't have been so much judgment, that it would have been much easier for them to deal with their addictions, because the shame is one of the biggest problems in this field, and I just hope that even people who've never thought about taking drugs or are afraid of it will at least like Jochem says, try to understand the other side and try to understand our perspective, and hopefully we can reach a better world with more understanding and respect for each other in the future together.
Yeah, tolerance and acceptance. That's the kind of, even if you don't want to, you should just respect people's choice, that they have their reasons for doing things or not doing things.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys, for your time. This has been really, really fun. I'd like to maybe we can do another podcast maybe around the election times in March, and see how it's gone and how successful it is.
Thank you, Ash. It was great.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Thank you so
Very
much.
nice.
Yeah.
We'll keep in touch, and thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Shifty Perspective. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you like, please give it a thumbs up and share this around. We really want to increase dialogue, and I'm trying to get different perspectives on everything. So, like whether obviously I am biased in this subject, but whether you're a drug user or you're not a drug user, I think it's a really important subject that we break the taboo. So, thank you for tuning in, and thank you, guys.